Hi, this is Paul of the Oaken Knight, where we have just finished our playthrough of Holland 44, GMT's Operation Market Garden game. I'd like to wrap up our treatment of Holland 44 by giving some thoughts on things that I liked about the game, things that I thought could be improved, and just an overall impression of the package in its entirety. My overall assessment of the game is that it's a real winner. It's truly enjoyable. It just generally feels right as to how the action unfolds in front of you between all the various forces in play and scattered all up and down the map with the various parachuted drones. The game is exciting, the game is demanding, there's a lot going on, and it's very enjoyable. But I'd like to give you some more specific good things and bad things, how I feel about the game. So I'm going to use a 3 up, 3 down format where I'm going to give you 3 positives, I'm going to give you 3 negatives, and you guys can draw your own conclusions as to how you feel about it. On the positive side, I really like the components. The oversized counters, they're 5/8 inch, they're beautiful. You know, I'm one of the guys that likes to clip counters with one of those fancy counter clippers, and they just turned out beautiful. They look great on the map, they don't get tangled up with little dog ears on the corners after I've clipped them, and the whole thing works really nice. Combined with a fairly low stacking density, it's just it makes shuffling the counters around the map a pleasure. And the map itself is so clear. You don't have any ambiguities as far as what is each hex contain. There's lots of different terrain types, but you're never guessing. You're never sweating over, gee, what hex is in this hex? Is it woods? Is it swamp or just whatever? Everything is very clear in my opinion as far as how the map is printed. Second thing I like about the game is that it's got good rules. This is Mark Simonich's, I don't know how many, probably about his 4th game in this series, and he does have it down. However, the game does have, its own idiosyncrasies. There's certain things he put in this game that are different than the others. I found the rules easy to maneuver through. It's got table of contents. It's got an index. It's got, it's just very clearly written rules. I like the end of the book. It's got extended playthrough examples. These are so helpful if you don't quite understand the rule and maybe you read the rule 10 different times and you still can't make sense of it. Pretty good chance you're going to see the rule in action in the playthrough in the back of the book. So that's all very good stuff. And then it's like in addition to the rules being clear and understandable, I would say the third thing I really like is that the system is solid. This is something about the 4th game in the series, as I said, and the rough edges are knocked off at this point. The game runs smoothly. It just is very clearly done, very nicely done. Final positive thing I'd say is that the design is solid. It's proven. It's been around, and say it's something about its 4th edition right now, or 4th incarnation. One of the things I really appreciate about how the rules have been put together, how the design has been put together, is that even though it's an operational level game, these things have been around for years and years and years with hexagons and zones of control. Mark finds ways to make them unique and his own design. The whole Zachbond concept, which he introduced in his earlier games, is just so novel. And to think that somebody could actually come up with something new to do with a zone of control that no one else had ever thought of, I think that's pretty impressive at this point. As far as areas to improve, I don't know about areas to improve, just things to be aware of. Let's put it that way. I'd say the first improvement area could be, that sometimes the rules just have a little bit too much chrome in them. I think some of the infiltration rules, although the city infiltration rule makes all kind of sense, the woods infiltration rule does not make any sense to me at all. I've never used it. I've never found a way to use it. My understanding of the way it's written, it is a way to sneak units through wood hexes where you already have a friendly unit established, and it'll sneak you through a zone of control, not a Zachbond, you can't get through that. But the number of times that that situation comes up is very limited. I just haven't found a use for it. So that's just me, but it just seems to me that there might have been a little bit too much put in the rule as far as a level of detail in certain spots that maybe were not necessary. The whole non-rule rule thing that I moaned about with comp group craft in the very beginning of the game, basically saying, well, for competitive reasons, maybe you should allow question mark unit to be redeployed such that craft cannot be surrounded and made vulnerable to elimination on turn one. Like I say, if it was important, it should have been a rule rather than this kind of commentary at the back of the book. If it was important enough to put in there, it was important enough to give it a rule number, and if nothing else, make it an optional rule, if it was that important. To me, I don't think it's that important. As we saw in the game, Kraft survived. He was able to sneak out, and there was no issue with it. A second negative that people should be aware is that there's no real scenarios. I played the majority of the turns of the short campaign, and really all it is, after 10 turns of play, there's some victory conditions that can be applied instead of, 20 turns. Okay, it's a half game. They have just different victory conditions that are applied after 10 turns or 20 turns. There's no real scenario. Since the game chops itself up into mini battles across the map, it would have been pretty easy to put together a first para scenario, or maybe even more a 30 course scenario where they're trying to take Eindhoven. A short game where two guys who are wanting to learn the game or just only have a relatively short amount of time to put into it, maybe a couple hours in an afternoon, could have been given something in the rule book that would have allowed them to do it and have legitimate victory conditions to be shooting for and all that. I have no doubt that those things will appear once the game has been out. Maybe Board Game Geek has it already, but as a right out of the box, no, it doesn't have that stuff. And the last thing negative that people should be aware is that things can happen in this game that will sway the victory one way or the other. And I would say we kind of saw it in the game we replayed, a few die rolls. I'm really talking about Colonel Frost and, say what we saw happen in the game we replayed. Yes, he was able to get over to Arnhem Bridge on turn 2 as he's supposed to, but when he hit that question mark unit, he took a step loss. And after he took that step loss, it was likely, and I said it a few times during the game before it actually happened, it was likely that he was going to have serious problem later after the Germans got their artillery in place, after they got a few strong units. And what we saw is the first time that Frost got hit in the game, he just got demolished. It took one turn to pick him up off the board after he had been weakened on that turn 2 attack to take the bridge to begin with. And as we saw in the game, once the bridge in Arnhem is in German hands, they're free to start moving reinforcements down to Nijmegen. Since the 82nd hadn't taken it earlier, it really became a race between 30th Corps and these reinforcements coming from Arnhem as far as who would get ensconced in the area first. Would the British be able to poke through the smaller forces that were there before the reinforcements came, or would those reinforcements get there in time to shore up the defense? Basically, in the game we saw, it worked in the Germans' favor. It was a near-run thing. It could have gone the other way, but really, like I say, the game kind of came down to a few critical die rolls as far as what happened to Colonel Frost in the beginning of the game, and he took his first step loss. What happened with I think it was a 3-1 with had artillery support, and when he got demolished, and then what happened with the 30th Corps attack, trying to take Nijmegen as kind of a desperation effort before all the German reinforcements showed up. It doesn't detract from the game per se, but it might bother some people. In a sense, if you think of Normandy 44, it would be the equivalent of the weather rolls. It would be the equivalent of having 1 chance in 6 of storm weather that shuts down the Allies' capability of bringing in reinforcements, getting supplies, and all the things they need to do to stage all the attacks they need to make in that game. If you get 2 or 3 storm turns in a row, especially early in the game, it's kind of over. And in this case, there's elements of that with these die rolls, with the critical die roll in Arnhem to get Frost to the bridge, and some of the battles at Nijmegen. So that aside, I think the game is a solid design. I think it's a pleasure to play, and honestly, I like the other things so much I can overlook that because it's just so much fun to play. All right, that's it for Holland 44. I'm going to take this one off the table, albeit probably temporarily. Although I will point out there's a fantastic Vassal module out there, and sometimes I just like to fire it up and play it for a few hours and not have to worry about having table space or taking time to actually set the thing up. I can just jump right in and start enjoying myself with it immediately. And oh, by the way, the Vassal module also works fantastic if you have a friend who is not in your immediate area like I do, and we're able to play that and Normandy 44 and similar games as much as we care to. Okay, thank you so much, guys. Again, this is my first effort at this. I hope when I made my mistakes, you winced not too badly. And if you can, please consider subscribing to my channel. All right, guys, thank you so much. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.